Anniversaries are meant to be a celebration of love, commitment, and shared memories. Our 10th anniversary was meticulously planned to reflect the essence of our relationship, set in a charming, rustic bar that held a special place in our hearts. The evening was designed to be perfect, with twinkling fairy lights, elegant floral arrangements, and the warm presence of friends and family. However, amidst the celebration, an unexpected guest arrived, setting off a chain of events that would challenge everything I thought I knew about our relationship. This is the story of that unforgettable night and the lessons learned from it. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press 0. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. Thank you. The evening was set to be a magical one, a celebration of love and commitment that had spanned a decade. Our 10th anniversary was not just a milestone, it was a testament to the journey Gwyneth and I had embarked upon together. The preparations had been meticulous, each detail carefully curated to reflect the essence of our relationship. The venue was a charming, rustic bar that held a special place in our hearts. It was where we had our first date, where we shared countless memories, and where we decided to host this significant celebration. The bar was transformed into a wonderland of twinkling fairy lights and elegant floral arrangements. The scent of fresh roses mingled with the subtle aroma of aged whiskey, creating an ambience that was both romantic and nostalgic. The tables were adorned with delicate lace runners and vintage candle holders, casting a warm, inviting glow across the room. Each centerpiece was a work of art, featuring a mix of peonies, hydrangeas, and eucalyptus, all in soft, pastel hues that complemented the overall theme of timeless elegance. As the guests began to arrive, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement and anticipation. Friends and family, some of whom had traveled from afar, gathered to celebrate our love story. Laughter and chatter filled the air, punctuated by the clinking of glasses and the soft strains of a live jazz band playing in the background. It was a scene straight out of a fairy tale, and I couldn't have been happier. Gwyneth looked stunning in a flowing, ivory gown that accentuated her graceful figure. Her hair was styled in loose waves, and she wore a simple yet elegant necklace that I had given her on our first anniversary. As she moved through the crowd, greeting guests and sharing warm embraces, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride and love. She was the epitome of beauty and grace, and I was grateful to have her by my side. The evening's program was carefully planned, with speeches, toasts, and a slideshow of our journey together. Each moment was designed to evoke emotion and celebrate the bond we had nurtured over the years. The speeches were heartfelt and touching, with friends and family sharing anecdotes and memories that highlighted the strength of our relationship. There were tears of joy and laughter, and the sense of camaraderie was palpable. As the night progressed, the energy in the room grew more vibrant. The band played lively tunes, and the dance floor came alive with guests swaying and twirling to the rhythm of the music. Gwyneth and I shared a dance, our movements synchronized as if we were the only two people in the room. It was a moment of pure bliss, a reminder of the love that had brought us together and the journey that lay ahead. The bar, with its dim lighting and cozy corners, provided the perfect backdrop for intimate conversations and stolen glances. It was a place where memories were made, and tonight was no exception. The bartenders, skilled in their craft, mixed signature cocktails that added a touch of sophistication to the evening. Each drink was a work of art, with vibrant colors and intricate garnishes that delighted the senses. As I moved through the crowd, I couldn't help but notice the smiles and laughter that surrounded me. It was a testament to the love and joy that filled the room, a reflection of the bond that Gwyneth and I shared. The night was unfolding perfectly, and I felt a deep sense of contentment. However, amidst the celebration, there was an undercurrent of something unexpected. Gwyneth's behavior, usually so composed and serene, seemed slightly off. She appeared distracted, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for something or someone. It was a subtle shift, but one that did not go unnoticed. I brushed it off, attributing it to the excitement and pressure of hosting such a significant event. Little did I know that this night, meant to be a celebration of our love, would take an unexpected turn. The arrival of an uninvited guest would set off a chain of events that would challenge everything I thought I knew about our relationship. The carefully crafted setup, the ambience, the joy, all of it would be overshadowed by a revelation that would leave me questioning the very foundation of our love. But for now, in this moment, the night was still ours. The anniversary setup was a testament to our journey, a celebration of the love and commitment that had brought us to this point. It was a night to remember, one that would be etched in our memories forever, for reasons both beautiful and unforeseen. The bar was a cornerstone of our relationship, a place where countless memories were etched into the fabric of our lives. It was where we had our first date, where we celebrated promotions, and where we sought solace during tough times. The dim lighting, the rustic wooden tables, and the familiar faces of the bartenders all contributed to an atmosphere that felt like a second home. It was only fitting that we chose this place to celebrate our anniversary, a milestone that marked another year of shared experiences and deepening love. As we walked in, the bar was buzzing with the usual Friday night crowd. The clinking of glasses, the hum of conversations, and the occasional burst of laughter created a lively backdrop. We were greeted warmly by the staff, who knew us well enough to have our favorite drinks ready. Gwyneth looked radiant, her eyes sparkling with excitement. She had always loved the energy of this place, and tonight was no different. We settled into our favorite corner booth, a cozy spot that offered a perfect view of the entire bar. It was a vantage point from which we could observe the ebb and flow of the evening while still enjoying our private celebration. The booth had witnessed many of our intimate conversations, and tonight, it seemed to embrace us with a sense of familiarity and comfort. As we sipped our drinks, we reminisced about the past year. We talked about the trips we had taken, the challenges we had overcome, and the dreams we still held close to our hearts. The conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by shared laughter and knowing glances. It felt like any other anniversary, a night dedicated to celebrating us. But as the evening progressed, I noticed something different about Gwyneth. She seemed more animated than usual, her eyes darting around the room as if she were expecting someone. At first, I brushed it off as excitement, but as the minutes ticked by, her behavior became increasingly puzzling. She kept glancing at her phone, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. It was unlike her to be so distracted, especially on a night that was supposed to be about us. I tried to engage her in conversation, hoping to draw her attention back to our celebration. We talked about our plans for the future, the places we wanted to visit, and the goals we aimed to achieve. But even as she responded, her eyes kept wandering, her focus slipping away. It was as if she were present in body but absent in spirit. The bar, usually a place of comfort and familiarity, began to feel different. The laughter and chatter that once felt welcoming now seemed distant and hollow. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, that there was an undercurrent of tension that I couldn't quite put my finger on. The bar, with all its memories, was now a stage for an unfolding drama that I was only beginning to sense. As the night wore on, Gwyneth's behavior grew more erratic. She excused herself to go to the restroom multiple times, each time returning with a slightly different demeanor. Her eyes, once filled with warmth and affection, now held a hint of something I couldn't decipher. It was as if she were carrying a secret, one that weighed heavily on her mind. I tried to push the unease aside, focusing instead on the positive aspects of the evening. We ordered another round of drinks, toasting to our love and the journey we had embarked on together. But even as we clinked glasses, the sense of foreboding lingered. The bar, with its familiar sights and sounds, had become a place of uncertainty and unanswered questions. It was during one of Gwyneth's trips to the restroom that I noticed him. A man, standing at the far end of the bar, his eyes fixed on our booth. He was tall, with a rugged appearance that contrasted sharply with the polished crowd around him. There was something about his gaze that sent a chill down my spine. It was intense, almost predatory, and it was directed solely at Gwyneth. I watched as he made his way through the crowd, his movements deliberate and purposeful. He stopped a few feet away from our booth, his eyes never leaving Gwyneth. It was clear that he knew her, and the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This was no coincidence, he was here for a reason. Gwyneth returned to the booth, her eyes widening in surprise as she saw the man standing there. For a moment, they locked eyes, and an unspoken understanding passed between them. It was a look that spoke volumes, a silent acknowledgement of a shared history that I was not a part of. The man approached our booth, his presence casting a shadow over our celebration. He introduced himself as Edgar, a name that meant nothing to me but seemed to hold significant weight for Gwyneth. She looked at him with a mixture of shock and recognition, her composure slipping for the first time that evening. As Edgar spoke, his voice low and measured, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. He talked about their past, about moments they had shared, and about feelings that had never truly faded. It was a revelation that shattered the illusion of our perfect night, exposing the cracks in our relationship that I had been blind to. The bar, once a place of memories and surprises, had become a battleground for truths and lies. The familiar faces of the bartenders, the rustic wooden tables, and the dim lighting all seemed to fade into the background as the reality of the situation set in. This was no longer just an anniversary celebration, it was a turning point, a moment that would redefine everything I thought I knew about Gwyneth and our relationship. As the night drew to a close, the bar's atmosphere shifted once again. The laughter and chatter that had once felt distant now seemed to mock the gravity of the situation. The place that had been a cornerstone of our relationship had become a witness to its unraveling, a silent observer of the unexpected guest who had turned our world upside down. In that moment, I realized that the bar, with all its memories and surprises, would never be the same again. It had become a place of revelation, a setting for truths that could no longer be ignored. And as I looked at Gwyneth, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and sorrow, I knew that our journey was far from over. The bar had given us countless memories, but it had also become the stage for the most unexpected and life-altering surprise of all. The evening began like any other anniversary celebration, filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the warm glow of candlelight. Yet, as the night progressed, I couldn't help but notice something off about Gwyneth. She was always the life of the party, effortlessly charming everyone around her, but tonight, her behavior was different, subtly, almost imperceptibly so, but different nonetheless. At first, it was the small things. Gwyneth, usually so attentive and engaged, seemed distracted. Her eyes would dart around the room, scanning the crowd as if she were looking for someone. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny and missed the punchlines of those that were. When I asked her if everything was all right, she brushed it off with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, saying she was just tired from the day's preparations. But it wasn't just her demeanor that was off, it was her actions too. She kept checking her phone, a habit she usually avoided during our special moments together. Each time the screen lit up, a flicker of something, anticipation, perhaps, crossed her face. She would quickly type out a message and then slip the phone back into her purse, her fingers lingering on the clasp as if she were expecting it to buzz again any second. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, convincing myself that I was overthinking things. After all, it was our anniversary, a night meant for celebration, not suspicion. But as the evening wore on, Gwyneth's mysterious behavior became harder to ignore. She excused herself to the restroom more times than seemed necessary, each time returning with a slightly different expression, sometimes relieved, sometimes anxious. When she was at the table, she seemed to be constantly on edge, her eyes flitting to the entrance of the bar every few minutes. It was as if she were waiting for someone to walk through the door. At one point, I caught her in a whispered conversation with the bartender, a young man named Jake who had been serving us all night. They spoke in hushed tones, their heads bent close together. When I approached, they quickly separated, and Gwyneth gave me a strained smile, saying she was just asking about the wine selection. But the look on Jake's face told a different story, one of concern and perhaps a hint of complicity. The more I observed, the more questions arose. Why was Gwyneth acting so strangely? Who was she texting? And what was she discussing with Jake? My mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I didn't want to cause a scene, especially not on our anniversary. Instead, I decided to keep a close eye on her, hoping to catch a clue that would explain her behavior. As the night continued, I noticed her glancing at a particular spot near the entrance, her eyes lingering there longer than anywhere else. It was as if she were expecting someone to arrive, someone important enough to make her act this way. Then, there was the matter of her attire. Gwyneth had always been stylish, but tonight she had gone above and beyond. She wore a stunning red dress that hugged her curves in all the right places, paired with heels that made her legs look impossibly long. Her makeup was flawless, her hair styled to perfection. She looked breathtaking, but there was an air of deliberate effort about her appearance, as if she were dressing to impress someone specific. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, my patience wore thin.
I couldn't stand the suspense any longer. I needed to know what was going on.
Just as I was about to pull Gwyneth aside and demand an explanation, the door to the bar swung open and a man walked in. He was tall, with dark hair and a confident stride. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on Gwyneth almost immediately. A slow smile spread across his face as he made his way towards our table. Gwyneth's reaction was immediate, her face lit up with a mixture of surprise and something else, something that looked alarmingly like joy. I watched in stunned silence as the man approached, his eyes never leaving Gwyneth's. She stood up, smoothing her dress nervously, and took a step towards him. They exchanged a few words, too quiet for me to hear, and then Gwyneth turned to me, her expression a mix of guilt and determination. "There's someone I need you to meet," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "This is Edgar." And just like that, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The mysterious behavior, the secretive texts, the anxious glances at the door, it all made sense now. Edgar was the reason for Gwyneth's strange actions, the person she had been waiting for all night. As I stood there, trying to process this new information, 1,000 questions flooded my mind. Who was Edgar? How did he know Gwyneth? And why had she invited him to our anniversary party? The answers to these questions would come soon enough, but for now, all I could do was watch as the night took an unexpected turn, one that would change everything. The evening was unfolding like a well-rehearsed play, each scene meticulously planned to celebrate a decade of love and partnership. The room was filled with the warm glow of candlelight, the soft hum of conversation, and the clinking of glasses. Friends and family mingled, sharing stories and laughter, while the band played a nostalgic tune that seemed to wrap everyone in a blanket of shared memories. It was a night designed to be perfect, a testament to the journey Gwyneth and I had embarked on together. But then, like an unscripted twist in a drama, he arrived. I first noticed him as I was making my way back from the bar, a fresh glass of champagne in hand. He stood near the entrance, scanning the room with an air of casual confidence that seemed out of place among the familiar faces. Dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of sophistication and ease, he exuded a magnetism that drew the eye. I couldn't place him, and yet, there was something unsettlingly familiar about his presence. As I approached Gwyneth, who was engaged in animated conversation with a group of our friends, I couldn't shake the feeling that this stranger was more than just an uninvited guest. I leaned in to whisper in her ear, "Do you know that guy by the door?" Gwyneth's eyes flicked towards the entrance, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of recognition, quickly masked by a practiced smile. "Oh, that's just Edgar," she said lightly, as if his presence was of no consequence. "He's an old friend from college. I must have forgotten to mention I invited him." Her explanation seemed plausible enough, but there was an edge to her voice that didn't quite match the nonchalance of her words. I decided to let it go, chalking it up to the stress of hosting such a significant event. After all, it was our anniversary, a night meant for celebration, not suspicion. Yet, as the evening progressed, I found my gaze drifting back to Edgar. He moved through the crowd with an ease that suggested he was no stranger to social gatherings, engaging in light conversation and charming those around him. But it was the way he looked at Gwyneth that set my nerves on edge. There was an intensity in his eyes, a familiarity that spoke of a connection deeper than mere friendship. I watched as Gwyneth excused herself from our friends and made her way towards Edgar. They stood close, their conversation too quiet to overhear, but their body language spoke volumes. There was a tension between them, a charged energy that seemed to crackle in the air. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, a sense of unease that I couldn't ignore. As the night wore on, I found myself playing the role of the attentive host, all the while keeping a watchful eye on Gwyneth and Edgar. They seemed to orbit each other, drawn together by an invisible force that I couldn't understand. It was as if the rest of the room had faded away, leaving just the two of them in their own private world. At one point, I saw them slip out onto the balcony, the soft glow of the fairy lights casting a romantic hue over their figures. I hesitated for a moment, torn between giving Gwyneth the benefit of the doubt and confronting the growing suspicion in my mind. Finally, curiosity and concern won out, and I made my way towards the balcony, my heart pounding in my chest. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me, a stark contrast to the warmth of the party inside. Gwyneth and Edgar were standing close, their heads bent together in deep conversation. I cleared my throat, and they both looked up, startled.
Everything okay out here?
I asked, trying to keep my tone light and casual. Gwyneth's smile was strained, her eyes flicking nervously between Edgar and me. Yes, of course, she said quickly.
We were just catching up. It's been so long since we've seen each other. Edgar nodded, his expression unreadable. Yes, it's been years. Gwyneth was just telling me about your anniversary. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you, I replied, my eyes narrowing slightly as I studied him.
It's been quite a journey.
There was an awkward silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. Finally, Gwyneth broke the tension, her voice a little too bright.
We should get back to the party. People will be wondering where we are.
As we made our way back inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The rest of the evening passed in a blur, my mind racing with questions and doubts.
Who was Edgar, really? And what was his connection to Gwyneth?
It wasn't until later, as the last guests were leaving and the party was winding down, that I found myself alone with Gwyneth. The room was quiet now, the remnants of the celebration scattered around us. I turned to her, my heart heavy with the weight of my suspicions.
Gwyneth, I began, my voice trembling slightly. Who is Edgar? And why do I feel like there's something you're not telling me?
She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and sorrow. I didn't want to tell you tonight, she said softly. But I suppose you deserve to know the truth. And with those words, the carefully constructed facade of our perfect evening began to crumble, revealing the secrets and lies that had been hidden beneath the surface.
The moment Edgar walked into the room, the atmosphere shifted.
It was as if a cold breeze had swept through the warm, celebratory air, leaving a trail of unease in its wake. He was tall, with an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance, and his eyes scanned the room with a familiarity that was unsettling. He didn't belong here, yet he moved with the assurance of someone who had every right to be present. I first noticed him when I was at the bar, chatting with old friends and reminiscing about the early days of my relationship with Gwyneth. The bartender had just handed me a glass of our favorite anniversary cocktail, a mix of champagne and elderflower liqueur, when I saw Edgar. He was standing near the entrance, his eyes locked onto Gwyneth with an intensity that made my stomach churn.
Who was this man? And why did he seem so fixated on my wife?
As I watched, Gwyneth's face lit up with a smile that I hadn't seen in years. It was a smile of recognition, of familiarity, and it was directed at Edgar. She excused herself from the group she was talking to and made her way over to him, her steps quickening as she got closer. They embraced, and for a moment, it felt like the world had tilted on its axis. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was an old friend, someone from her past who had unexpectedly shown up to celebrate our special night. But the way they held each other, the way their bodies seemed to fit together so naturally, told a different story. This was no casual acquaintance. I made my way through the crowd, my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached, I could hear snippets of their conversation. They were speaking in hushed tones, their heads close together, and I caught the tail end of a sentence that made my blood run cold. "Missed you so much," Gwyneth was saying, her voice tinged with emotion. Edgar's response was lost in the noise of the party, but the look in his eyes spoke volumes. There was a history here, a connection that went far deeper than I could have imagined. I cleared my throat, and they both turned to look at me. Gwyneth's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, she looked almost guilty. Edgar, on the other hand, regarded me with a cool, appraising gaze. He didn't seem the least bit fazed by my presence. "Edgar, this is Asher," Gwyneth said, her voice strained.
"Asher, this is Edgar, an old friend."
Old friend. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. I extended my hand, and Edgar took it, his grip firm and unyielding.
"Nice to meet you," he said, his tone polite but distant.
"Likewise," I replied, forcing a smile. The three of us stood there in awkward silence, the noise of the party fading into the background. I could feel the tension radiating from Gwyneth, and I knew that there was more to this story than she was letting on. But this was not the time or place for a confrontation.
Not yet. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease.
Edgar seemed to be everywhere, always hovering on the periphery of my vision. He mingled with the guests, charming them with his easy smile and quick wit, but his eyes always found their way back to Gwyneth. And she, in turn, seemed drawn to him, her gaze lingering on him longer than was appropriate. I tried to focus on the celebration, on the friends and family who had gathered to share in our joy. But the presence of Edgar cast a shadow over everything. It was like a dark cloud that refused to dissipate, no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. At one point, I found myself alone with Edgar on the balcony, the cool night air a welcome relief from the stifling atmosphere inside. He was leaning against the railing, a glass of whiskey in his hand, and he turned to look at me as I approached. "Beautiful night," he said, his voice smooth and untroubled. "Yes, it is," I replied, my tone guarded. We stood there in silence for a moment, the sounds of the party drifting out to us. I could feel his eyes on me, studying me, and I resisted the urge to fidget under his scrutiny. "You have a lovely home," he said finally. "And a lovely wife." There it was. The unspoken challenge, the insinuation that he knew something I didn't. I bristled at his words, but I kept my composure. "Thank you," I said evenly. "We've worked hard to build this life together." He nodded, taking a sip of his whiskey. "I'm sure you have." The conversation ended there, but the tension between us was palpable. I knew that this was far from over, that there were questions that needed answers and truths that needed to be uncovered. But for now, all I could do was wait and watch, hoping that the night would end without further incident. As I rejoined the party, I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. Edgar's presence had stirred something deep within me, a fear that I had long buried. And as I looked at Gwyneth, laughing and dancing with our friends, I couldn't shake the feeling that our lives were about to change in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. The night wore on, and the celebration continued, but the shadow of Edgar loomed large. He was the uninvited guest, the intruder who had disrupted our carefully crafted world. And as the clock ticked towards midnight, I knew that the answers I sought would not come easily. But one thing was certain, this anniversary would be one we would never forget. The room seemed to freeze in time as Gwyneth's eyes met mine, her face a canvas of conflicting emotions. The laughter and chatter of our friends and family faded into a distant hum, replaced by the deafening silence of my own heartbeat. I could see the struggle in her eyes, the internal battle between fear and the need to come clean. It was a look I had never seen before, and it sent a shiver down my spine. "Gwyneth, what's going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, yet it felt like a shout in the stillness that had enveloped us. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she reached for mine. "Asher, there's something I need to tell you," she began, her voice cracking under the weight of her words. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of the evening's events. The mysterious behavior, the stranger in the crowd, Edgar's unexpected arrival, it all seemed to point to a hidden truth that was about to be unveiled. I braced myself for whatever was coming, but nothing could have prepared me for what she said next. "Asher, Edgar. Edgar is someone I used to know," she confessed, her eyes welling up with tears. We were involved, romantically, before you and I met." The words hit me like a freight train, knocking the wind out of me. I felt a rush of emotions, shock, betrayal, confusion, all swirling together in a chaotic storm. "What do you mean, involved?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. Gwyneth squeezed my hands tighter, as if trying to anchor herself in the moment. "We were in a relationship, Asher. It was serious, but it ended badly. I never thought I'd see him again, and I certainly didn't expect him to show up here tonight." I pulled my hands away, needing space to process what I was hearing. "Why didn't you tell me about him before? Why now, on our anniversary of all nights?" She wiped away a tear, her voice barely holding steady. "I was afraid, Asher. Afraid of how you'd react, afraid of dredging up the past. But when I saw him tonight, I knew I couldn't keep it from you any longer. You deserve to know the truth." The room seemed to close in around me as I struggled to make sense of it all. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew inside and out, had been hiding a significant part of her past from me. And now, on what was supposed to be a celebration of our love, that past had come crashing into our present. "Did you invite him?" I asked, the question burning on my tongue.
Gwyneth shook her head vehemently. No, I swear I didn't.
I have no idea how he found out about the party.
I haven't spoken to him in years.
I wanted to believe her, but the doubt gnawed at me.
Why would he come here, then? What does he want?
She looked down, her shoulders slumping under the weight of her confession.
I don't know, Asher.
Maybe he wanted closure, or maybe he wanted to stir up trouble. All I know is that seeing him again has brought back a lot of memories I thought I'd buried.
I took a step back, needing to put some distance between us. And what about us, Gwyneth? What does this mean for us?
She looked up, her eyes pleading with me to understand.
It means that I love you, Asher. It means that I want to be honest with you, no matter how painful it might be. I don't want any more secrets between us.
In the midst of his turmoil, Asher felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see his best friend, Mark, looking at him with concern.
Are you okay?
Mark asked softly, his voice filled with empathy. Asher shook his head, unable to find the words to express the storm of emotions raging within him. Mark pulled him into a hug, offering silent support as Asher's tears finally began to fall. The embrace was a lifeline, a reminder that he wasn't alone in his pain. Asher clung to it, drawing strength from the connection. He knew he would have to face Gwyneth, to confront her about the affair and the betrayal. But for now, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of his emotions, to grieve for the love he had lost and the future that had been shattered. As the night wore on, Asher found himself retreating to a quiet corner of the bar, seeking solace in the familiar surroundings. The memories of happier times, of laughter and love, seemed to mock him now. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, but the pain was still raw, the wound still fresh. He knew it would take time to heal, to come to terms with what had happened. In the days that followed, Asher's emotional turmoil continued to ebb and flow. There were moments of anger, when he wanted to lash out at Gwyneth and Edgar, to make them feel the pain he was experiencing. There were moments of sadness, when the weight of the betrayal felt almost unbearable. And there were moments of numbness, when he felt disconnected from everything around him, as if he were living in a dream. He found himself questioning everything, from his relationship with Gwyneth to his own self-worth. Had he not been enough for her? Had he failed in some way? The doubts gnawed at him, eroding his confidence and leaving him feeling adrift. He sought solace in his friends and family, leaning on them for support as he navigated the emotional minefield. Asher also turned to writing as a way to process his feelings. He poured his heart out onto the pages of his journal, capturing the raw, unfiltered emotions that he struggled to express aloud. The act of writing was cathartic, a way to make sense of the chaos within him. It allowed him to confront his pain head-on, to explore the depths of his hurt and begin the slow process of healing. Through it all, Asher knew that he would eventually have to face Gwyneth. He needed answers, closure, and a way to move forward. But he also knew that he needed time to heal, to rebuild his sense of self and find his footing once more. The journey ahead would be difficult, but he was determined to emerge stronger, to learn from the experience and grow. Her words hung in the air, a fragile promise that felt both comforting and terrifying. I wanted to believe her, to trust that this revelation was a step towards a stronger, more honest relationship. But the wound was still fresh, and the pain was too raw. I need some time, I said finally, my voice barely audible. I need to think about all of this. Gwyneth nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and sorrow. I understand, Asher. Take all the time you need. Just know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. As I walked away, the weight of her confession settled heavily on my shoulders. The night had taken a turn I never could have anticipated, and the path ahead seemed uncertain and fraught with challenges. But one thing was clear, our relationship would never be the same again. Asher stood frozen, his mind a whirlwind of emotions that he could barely comprehend. The revelation of Gwyneth's affair with Edgar had hit him like a freight train, leaving him reeling in a state of shock and disbelief. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat a painful reminder of the betrayal he had just uncovered. The room around him seemed to blur, the faces of friends and family fading into the background as his world crumbled. He felt a surge of anger, hot and fierce, rising within him. How could she do this to him?
To them?
Their anniversary was supposed to be a celebration of their love, a testament to the years they had spent together. Instead, it had become a nightmare, a twisted mockery of everything they had built. Asher clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms as he struggled to contain the rage that threatened to consume him. But beneath the anger, there was a deep, aching sadness. He had loved Gwyneth with all his heart, had trusted her implicitly. The thought of her with someone else, of her sharing the intimacy they had once cherished with another man, was almost too much to bear. It felt like a knife to the heart, a wound that would never fully heal. Asher's eyes stung with unshed tears, his vision blurring as he fought to keep his composure. He couldn't help but replay the events of the evening in his mind, searching for signs he might have missed. Gwyneth's distant behavior, the way she had seemed preoccupied and distracted. The way she had looked at Edgar when he arrived, a look that spoke volumes. How had he not seen it? How had he been so blind? The questions swirled in his mind, each one a dagger of doubt and self-recrimination. Asher's thoughts turned to Edgar, the man who had intruded on their special night. He felt a surge of jealousy, a bitter taste in his mouth as he imagined the two of them together. What did Edgar have that he didn't? What had drawn Gwyneth to him? The questions gnawed at him, feeding his insecurities and deepening his sense of betrayal. He wanted to confront Edgar, to demand answers, but he knew it would only lead to more pain. As he sat in the quiet of his apartment, surrounded by the remnants of their life together, Asher took a deep breath and made a promise to himself. He would not let this betrayal define him. He would not let it break him. He would face his emotions head-on, confront the pain, and come out the other side stronger and more resilient. It was a promise born of determination and hope, a beacon of light in the darkness of his emotional turmoil. The bar was dimly lit, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with the tension in the air. The clinking of glasses and the murmur of conversations provided a backdrop to the unfolding drama. Asher stood at the counter, his knuckles white as he gripped his drink. He had just learned that Edgar, the man who had been mingling with their friends and family, was not just any guest, he was Gwyneth's lover. Asher's mind raced, replaying the events of the evening. The way Gwyneth had been acting strangely, her nervous glances, and the hushed conversations. It all made sense now. He felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. He needed answers, and he needed them now. He spotted Gwyneth and Edgar at the far end of the bar, their heads close together in what seemed like an intimate conversation. The sight made his blood boil. Taking a deep breath, he made his way towards them, each step heavy with the weight of his emotions. "Gwyneth," he called out, his voice steady but laced with anger. She looked up, her eyes widening in surprise and fear. Edgar turned to face him, a smug expression on his face that only fueled Asher's rage. "We need to talk," Asher said, his eyes never leaving Gwyneth's. She nodded, her face pale, and gestured for Edgar to leave. But Edgar didn't move. Instead, he leaned back against the bar, crossing his arms over his chest. "Anything you have to say to her, you can say in front of me," Edgar said, his tone challenging. Asher clenched his jaw, trying to keep his composure. "Fine," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "What the hell is going on here, Gwyneth? Why is he here? And why did you invite him to our anniversary party?" Gwyneth looked down, unable to meet his gaze. "Asher, I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how." "Tell me what?" Asher demanded, his patience wearing thin. "That Edgar and we've been seeing each other for a while now," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Asher felt like he'd been punched in the gut. He took a step back, trying to process her words. "How long?" he asked, his voice breaking. 6 months, she replied, tears streaming down her face. 6 months? Asher repeated, his voice rising. "You've been cheating on me for 6 months, and you thought it was a good idea to bring him here tonight? To our anniversary party?" Gwyneth sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "I'm so sorry, Asher. I never wanted to hurt you." Edgar, who had been silent until now, decided to chime in. "Look, man, it's not her fault. We fell in love. It happens. Asher's eyes snapped to Edgar, his anger flaring.
You stay out of this, he growled. This is between me and my wife. Edgar smirked, clearly enjoying the confrontation. Ex-wife, you mean? Because after tonight, there's no way you're staying together.
Asher lunged at Edgar, his fist connecting with his jaw.
The bar erupted in chaos as people tried to pull them apart.
Gwyneth screamed, begging them to stop. But Asher couldn't hear her over the roaring in his ears. All he could think about was the betrayal and the pain. Finally, they were separated, and Asher was dragged away by a couple of friends. He stood there, breathing heavily, his knuckles bruised and bleeding. Edgar wiped the blood from his lip, still smirking.
You think this is over? Asher shouted. You think you can just walk into my life and take everything from me? Edgar shrugged. I didn't take anything. She came to me.
Asher felt another surge of anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. He turned to Gwyneth, who was still crying.
Why, Gwyneth? Why did you do this to us?
She looked up at him, her eyes filled with regret.
I don't know, Asher. I was unhappy, and Edgar made me feel alive again. But I never wanted to hurt you. I still care about you.
Asher shook his head, feeling a mix of sadness and anger.
You should have talked to me. We could have worked through it together. But now, I don't know if I can ever forgive you. Gwyneth reached out to him, but he stepped back. Please, Asher. I know I messed up, but I still love you.
He looked at her, his heart breaking. I don't know if that's enough anymore, Gwyneth. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing there with Edgar. The bar slowly returned to normal, but the tension lingered in the air.
Asher knew that his life would never be the same again.
The confrontation at the bar had shattered everything he thought he knew about his marriage, and he was left to pick up the pieces of his broken heart. The aftermath of that fateful anniversary night was like waking up in the middle of a storm, with debris scattered everywhere and no clear path to safety. Asher found himself standing in the wreckage of his once stable life, trying to make sense of the chaos that had unfolded. The revelation of Gwyneth's affair with Edgar had shattered his world, leaving him grappling with a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, and confusion. In the days that followed, Asher felt like he was living in a fog. The vibrant colors of his life had dulled, and everything seemed to move in slow motion. He replayed the events of that night over and over in his mind, trying to pinpoint the exact moment when everything had gone wrong. Was it when he first noticed Gwyneth's distant behavior? Or was it when Edgar walked into the bar, a stranger who would soon become the catalyst for his heartbreak? Asher's first instinct was to withdraw from everyone and everything. He took time off work, unable to focus on anything other than the pain that gnawed at his heart. Friends and family reached out, offering their support, but he found it difficult to talk about what had happened. How could he explain the depth of his hurt when he barely understood it himself? Despite his desire to isolate himself, Asher knew that he couldn't stay in this state forever. He had to find a way to move forward, to pick up the pieces of his shattered life and rebuild. But where to start? The task seemed insurmountable, like trying to put together a puzzle with missing pieces. One of the first steps Asher took was to seek professional help. He found a therapist who specialized in relationship issues and began attending regular sessions. Talking to someone who could offer an objective perspective was a relief. The therapist helped him navigate his emotions, offering strategies to cope with the pain and begin the healing process. Through therapy, Asher learned the importance of self-care. He started to prioritize his well-being, engaging in activities that brought him joy and peace. He took up running, finding solace in the rhythmic pounding of his feet against the pavement. He also rediscovered his love for painting, losing himself in the creative process and using it as an outlet for his emotions. Asher's friends played a crucial role in his recovery. They rallied around him, offering their unwavering support and reminding him that he was not alone. They encouraged him to open up about his feelings, creating a safe space for him to express his pain and anger. Slowly but surely, Asher began to feel the weight of his burden lift, even if just a little. One of the most challenging aspects of the aftermath was dealing with Gwyneth. Despite everything, Asher still loved her, and the thought of losing her completely was unbearable. They had shared so many beautiful moments together, and the idea of throwing it all away felt like another betrayal. But trust had been broken, and rebuilding it would be a long and arduous journey. Asher and Gwyneth decided to attend couples therapy, hoping to find a way to mend their fractured relationship. The sessions were intense and emotionally draining, forcing them to confront their deepest fears and insecurities. There were moments of progress, where they felt a glimmer of hope, but there were also setbacks that left them questioning if they could ever truly move past the betrayal. Throughout this process, Asher learned a lot about himself and his relationship with Gwyneth. He realized that their problems had not started with Edgar's arrival, there had been underlying issues that they had ignored for too long. Communication had broken down, and they had grown distant without even realizing it. The affair was a symptom of a much larger problem, and if they were to have any chance of moving forward, they needed to address the root causes. Asher also had to come to terms with his own role in the relationship's deterioration. It was easy to place all the blame on Gwyneth, but he knew that he had made mistakes too. He had taken her for granted, assuming that their love was strong enough to withstand anything. He had failed to notice the signs of her unhappiness, too caught up in his own world to see that she was struggling. Forgiveness was another hurdle that Asher had to overcome. It was not something that could be given lightly, and he wrestled with the idea of forgiving Gwyneth for her betrayal. But he also knew that holding on to anger and resentment would only poison his heart further. Forgiveness was not about excusing her actions but about freeing himself from the grip of bitterness. As the weeks turned into months, Asher began to see glimpses of light at the end of the tunnel. The pain was still there, but it no longer consumed him. He and Gwyneth were making progress, slowly rebuilding their trust and learning to communicate openly and honestly. It was a long road, and there were no guarantees, but they were committed to trying. The experience had changed Asher in profound ways. He had been forced to confront his vulnerabilities and insecurities, emerging stronger and more self-aware. He had learned the importance of nurturing his relationships and not taking them for granted. Most importantly, he had discovered that even in the face of heartbreak, there was always hope for healing and growth. In the end, picking up the pieces was not about returning to the way things were before. It was about creating something new, something stronger and more resilient. Asher knew that the journey was far from over, but he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With the support of his loved ones and the lessons he had learned, he was determined to rebuild his life, one piece at a time. Life has a peculiar way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. The night of our anniversary party was supposed to be a celebration of love, commitment, and shared memories. Instead, it turned into a whirlwind of emotions, revelations, and unexpected guests. But as the dust settled, it became clear that this night, as tumultuous as it was, offered invaluable lessons that would shape our future. First and foremost, the importance of communication cannot be overstated. Gwyneth's decision to invite Edgar, her lover, to our anniversary party was a shocking revelation. But what was even more startling was the realization that there had been a significant breakdown in our communication long before that night. In the hustle and bustle of daily life, we had stopped talking about our feelings, our fears, and our desires. We had become complacent, assuming that everything was fine because we weren't arguing or facing any apparent issues. This night served as a stark reminder that open, honest communication is the bedrock of any relationship. It's not enough to just coexist, we need to actively engage with each other, share our thoughts, and address any concerns before they fester into something more significant. Another crucial lesson was the importance of self-awareness and introspection. Asher's emotional turmoil was a testament to the fact that he had been neglecting his own needs and feelings for far too long. In the aftermath of the confrontation, he took the time to reflect on his own actions and behaviors. He realized that he had been so focused on maintaining the facade of a perfect relationship that he had ignored the cracks that were beginning to show. This night forced him to confront his own vulnerabilities and acknowledge that it's okay to not have everything figured out. It's okay to seek help, to talk to friends, or even to see a therapist. Self-awareness is the first step towards healing and growth. Trust, once broken, is incredibly challenging to rebuild. Gwyneth's confession shattered the trust that had been the foundation of their relationship. But it also highlighted the importance of forgiveness and understanding. While it would be easy to vilify Gwyneth for her actions, it's essential to recognize that relationships are complex, and people make mistakes. Moving forward, both Asher and Gwyneth had to decide whether they were willing to put in the effort to rebuild that trust. It required patience, empathy, and a genuine desire to understand each other's perspectives. Trust is not something that can be restored overnight, but with consistent effort and a commitment to change, it is possible to rebuild. The night also underscored the significance of setting boundaries. Edgar's presence at the party was a blatant disregard for the sanctity of Asher and Gwyneth's relationship. It was a wake-up call for both of them to establish and enforce boundaries in their personal lives. Boundaries are essential for maintaining a healthy relationship, as they help define what is acceptable and what is not. They provide a sense of security and respect, ensuring that both partners feel valued and understood. Moving forward, Asher and Gwyneth had to have candid conversations about their boundaries and ensure that they were both on the same page. One of the most profound lessons from that night was the realization that love is not always enough. While love is a powerful force, it cannot sustain a relationship on its own. It needs to be accompanied by respect, trust, communication, and effort. Asher and Gwyneth had to come to terms with the fact that their love for each other, while genuine, was not enough to overcome the challenges they were facing. They needed to actively work on their relationship, addressing the issues that had been ignored for so long. Love is a choice, and it requires continuous effort and commitment. The night also highlighted the importance of support systems. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Asher found solace in his friends and family. They provided him with a safe space to express his feelings, offering advice and support without judgment. It's essential to have a strong support system, especially during challenging times. Friends and family can offer a different perspective, helping you navigate through difficult situations. They remind you that you are not alone and that there are people who care about your well-being. Lastly, the night served as a reminder that it's okay to let go. Not every relationship is meant to last forever, and that's okay. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself and your partner is to acknowledge that it's time to move on. Holding on to a relationship that is no longer serving you can be detrimental to your mental and emotional health. It's essential to recognize when it's time to let go and to do so with grace and compassion. Moving forward, Asher and Gwyneth had to decide whether they were willing to put in the effort to rebuild their relationship or if it was time to part ways. In conclusion, the night of our anniversary party was a roller coaster of emotions and revelations. But amidst the chaos, it offered invaluable lessons that would shape our future. It reminded us of the importance of communication, self-awareness, trust, boundaries, effort, support systems, and the courage to let go. While it was a night we would never forget, it was also a night that taught us more about ourselves and our relationship than we could have ever imagined. Moving forward, we were determined to take these lessons to heart, ensuring that we would never find ourselves in such a situation again. The night of our anniversary party was a roller coaster of emotions and revelations, transforming what was meant to be a celebration into a life-altering experience. It underscored the importance of communication, self-awareness, trust, boundaries, effort, support systems, and the courage to let go. While it was a night we would never forget, it also offered invaluable lessons that would shape our future. Moving forward, we were determined to take these lessons to heart, ensuring that we would never find ourselves in such a situation again. The journey ahead was uncertain, but with the support of loved ones and a commitment to growth, we were ready to rebuild our lives, one piece at a time. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press 0. Your feedback is my fuel to gather more inspiring and meaningful stories. Thank you.